Good evening. Welcome to another episode of the DMV Daily Radio Show. I'm your host, Hassan Giordano, a.k.a. Mr. Politics, back in the building. And today we have a remarkable program in store for you, as we are joined by an even more remarkable young lady whose in-depth research will help us delve into the background of Baltimore City's incoming police commissioner, who started his job just today, along with the consultants that the city pays and the money that's spent over years in order to come to the decision to bring commissioners to town like Mr. Michael Harrison. But before we get into this program, as always, I got to let you know that this program is brought to you by our fine sponsors, such as that stellar legal team known as the Bates & Garcia Law Firm, specializing in criminal defense, real estate, and bodily injury cases. Bates & Garcia is Maryland's legal dream team, so make sure you contact them today for your free consultation at 410-814-4600. Now, I'm telling you, the weather's bad out there. If you got an offender bender today, Bates & Garcia is the one you want to call. 410-814-4600. If you got locked up for smoking weed, because apparently, no matter what the police, the state's attorney has to say, people were about to get locked up smoking weed just the other night in East Baltimore. Bates & Garcia is who you want to call. Matter of fact, we have an issue and they have a case right now that we'll talk about tomorrow on Tell the Truth Tuesday, because we're going to expose that entire marijuana hype that's going on here in the city of Baltimore. But before we get into that, we got to talk about today's show. This show is also brought to you by those savvy political strategists at Politicom Strategic Solutions, who have mastered the art of political communications and successfully helped get people elected to office since the 1970s. If you're thinking about running for office in 2020, make sure you give them a call today to get your campaign set up with a user-friendly website, integrated social media sites, campaign plan, and more. They can be reached at 240-242-7505 or on the web at www.politicomsolutions.com. And you got to know that Together We Rise is not just a slogan, but it's a blueprint for the future of the union movement. The show's also sponsored by those great union members at the SEIU 500, who want you to give them a call, reach out to them, join the union movement over there at SEIU 500. www.seiu500.org is the number, and they want you to know that the fight for 15 is real. They need your support, so get behind that fight today. Now, DMV Daily is always looking to produce polarizing podcasts and informative live stream programs like this one, including our weekly Annapolis report, airs every Monday here on dmvdaily.news, as well as being heard on the Larry Young Morning Show every Tuesday morning from 7:15 to 7:30 a.m. on WOLB 1010 a.m., where information is power. Or go on DMV Daily and catch the hottest legal podcast of 2019. Of course, I'm talking about Law and Disorder with Ivan Bates, which premieres every other Tuesday, with the first episode receiving so many numbers, it's jumping off the hook, geez. I mean, it's hundreds of people have downloaded this podcast, and that's just the first episode. Wait till you get a hold of the next one. Next week's episode is going to be off the chains. You definitely don't want to miss that. But if you want your own podcast or your own live stream radio program produced by DMV Daily Media, just give us a call. We're in studios right down here in the old Goucher neighborhood, right inside the heart of Charles Village, right off of 25th and Maryland Avenue. We can produce it for you. We can produce your own advertisement for your business or for your venue of choice. So make sure you give us a call today. 443-294-3900 is the number, or just give us an email, info@dmvdaily.news, or go to the website. We're always looking for talented citizen journalists like our guest today to join the DMV Daily News family. We want to make sure that we get out that information, not just podcasts, not just radio, but also journalism. That ink pen is a powerful weapon, and we want to make sure that we expose what's going on. And so citizen journalists are the way to go. Independent journalists. And that's what we'll always be looking for. If you have an op-ed, an article that you want submit it on DMV Daily. Just go to the website, put it right there, or just email it over, info@dmvdaily.news. Now, remember, we're also gearing up to launch that much anticipated Value My Vote 2020 podcast, where we will delve into the 2020 elections with the video podcast of political analysts, political reporters, and local leaders breaking down the candidates running in 2020 for city council, council president, comptroller, and the mayor and Congress. Speaking of the council president, I ran into our great council president earlier this morning as he was walking into City Hall, and I want to make it clear, because he made it very clear to me, as much as we continue, that's why I say everybody's listening to this show, because he made it a point to let me know that as much as we say he may not run for office, he got upset by the people who are even thinking about challenging him. He will be running for re-election for city council president in 2020. So put that to rest. He is not retiring. He's not stepping away, and he's doing a great job, in his words. And I believe he is doing a pretty good job. I mean, you know, you can run against people for whatever reasons, but one thing you're not going to get on with Bernard Jack Young is he's definitely a worker. He's definitely going to be there and do his job the way he sees fit. And he's been, in my opinion, been doing a pretty damn good job over the past few years. But I'm sure we'll see a few candidates run against him in 2020. So nonetheless, you want to make sure to tune into the Value My Vote 2020 podcast to get those one-on-one interviews with all the candidates running for office. And stay tuned to DMV Daily Radio Show. Of course, we've already started with our Friday election 2020 coverage of all the candidates running. This week, we have a wonderful young lady by the name of Felicia Porter, who's running in the 10th Councilmatic District, coming onto the program. You definitely do not want to miss that. We've reached out to a young lady who also made her announcement recently, Tori Rose, who's running over in the 7th Council District, to be able to join our good friend Felicia Porter this Friday. So make sure you tune in this Friday for that wonderful program as well. Now, don't forget, DMV Daily Radio is currently in the process. I know y'all saw it today on social media for our first live stream town hall is next Monday, February 18th from 5 to 8 p.m. at Union Baptist Church, 1219 Drew Hill Avenue. It's our President's Day Public Safety Forum, as we invite the community and local stakeholders for a live stream broadcast and a discussion on the issues that are facing our community as it relates to crime and public safety and the reform of the criminal justice system. Now, we have Tara Huffman from OSI. We have Karen York from Job Opportunities Task Force. We got Nicole Mundell from Out for Justice. We got Councilman Brandon Scott, Chair of the Public Safety Committee. We got Councilman Zeke Cohen, Chair of the Education Committee. Who else we got? We got Sergeant Clyde Boatwright from the FOP, Baltimore City Schools. We're going to talk about guns in schools, along with guns on the streets of Baltimore, along with the restoration of rights for those returning citizens here in the city of Baltimore. So much is going to be discussed. You need to be in the building that night. If you can't make it out to Union Baptist Church next Monday from 5 to 8, you can watch it or listen to it live stream right here on DMVDaily.news, or always tune in to our social media pages, Periscope, Facebook, as well as YouTube at DMV Daily News. Now, if you want to join in today's conversation, make sure you just call in or even text in your questions and comments to the studio phone line. 410-819-2370 is that number. Or if you're watching us on the Facebook Live feed, as so many of you do, Jackie Addison, I see you, Bobby Moore, I see all y'all on there. If you got a question, you got a comment in regards to today's conversation, make sure that you leave it right there. You know, we're always engaged on our Facebook feed. Now, tonight's guest, you may have seen or read some of her work on Baltimore crime on news sites like the Baltimore Brew, the Baltimore Fishbowl, the Undisclosed Podcast, the Jewish Journal, or on our own website, the Suter Files. We are joined tonight by independent journalist Justine Barron, as she joins the DMV Daily Show. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming back. Absolutely.
I'm here. I got stuff to say and people to listen finally.
That's what I'm talking about. Well, our family is definitely listening. Family, we're going to talk about the police commissioner, Michael Harrison. Of course, he starts today in his new role as the police commissioner, with a new salary of $275,000 on top of his incentives, bonuses, and everything else that comes along with the contract.
$3,000 a month for housing for the first year.
Until his house was sold. But like we said, you're not going to sell your house for the first year if you're going to get this $3,000.
Yeah.
And then that's on top of a living expense that he gets. You've done a lot of research behind not only commissioners pay, but more so about the consultants that get paid to make decisions like this and things of that sort. What prompted you in the first place to kind of look into stuff like that?
Well, with Undisclosed, we researched the death of Freddie Gray, and I did an episode on the reign of Anthony Batts and his role in all of that. And so in looking into Anthony Batts, I went back to Long Beach and to Oakland. I talked to people there, and I started to wonder, how did this guy end up in Baltimore when he had such a bad track record in these two cities? I mean, in one city, there was Lobstergate, this big scandal of him, harassing whistleblowers and retaliating against them. And then they lost millions of dollars. In Long Beach, they actually moved him into city manager just to get him away from the cops, actually, while he was under contract. And then he went to Oakland and he broke the contract after a year, tried looking for another job. So I was just, a big question people out there had is, why did Baltimore want him? Mm-hmm. And that's when I learned about the police executive research for him. And actually, if you've been listening closely to the things that Mayor Pugh has been saying in the last year about Fitzgerald and Harrison, she's constantly referring to them. And so I think what the word that I want to get out there is I think in Baltimore, there's this maybe misguided notion that nobody wants to run the Baltimore Police Department, and that's why we haven't had any luck getting anyone since D'Souza. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that what I know is that Baltimore has been consistently contracting with this agency. And in learning about them, I've sort of unraveled special interests and conflicts of interest. And I just want people to know so that, first of all, we have to know our history so we don't keep making the same mistakes, right? And so I looked into what PERF, the Police Executive Research Forum, is, the power that they've had over Baltimore, the money that they've taken from Baltimore, and their background and history. So that's kind of some of what I wanted to share.
Well, and I want you to share. Now, I'm trying to see it, and see a lot of people aren't familiar with this, and I want to see, because there was a nonprofit foundation years ago under the Bill Feld administration, where there was actually several articles about the money that was paid to this foundation in expenditures. They got $6 million for, I think it was 3-year period of time. It was a Center for Research on Institutions and Social Policy, where they were spending like $35,000 on entertainment and so on and so forth. This for the Diamond training.
Oh, right, yeah.
This is separate from what you're talking about. Correct?
It is. It's separate. And yet, if you really investigate, it's sort of, there's this class, it's PERF, Harvard Institute, Diamond Training. There's this class of police leaders in this country that have a lot of influence, a lot of money. And William Bratton is probably the most recognizable name on it. He ran New York, NYPD, LAPD, back to NYPD. He's been on the cover of Time magazine, and he's got a network of acolytes and friends, and they run a lot of these consulting agencies. That was another example of what has been happening in Baltimore in terms of, do we really think the mayor was, and whoever works for her was out there like combing through every police department in the country to find future good leaders for Baltimore? No, she hired PERF. And I could tell you a little bit about PERF. Okay. Mm-hmm. So PERF, it was founded in the late 70s. And what they do is they have members. And members are police leaders. They have to have a 4-year college degree. And they also have a training institute. And it's expensive. And PERF, the bonus of being a part of PERF is you get to kind of attend a lot of conferences and you get to put it on your resume. So here's 3 people that were members of PERF and paid money to attend their training program. Anthony Batts, Fitzgerald, Harrison.
Wow.
The last
no
3,
coincidence,
it's
sure.
not. And that's the last 3 commissioners that have been recommended by this agency to Baltimore. Anthony Batts with this really poor track record. He arrives here, people are asking questions, and PERF members and leaders tell Justin Fenton at the Baltimore Sun, Oakland wasn't his fault. Oakland is a mess. That's a literal quote. Oakland is a mess. I mean, I could imagine people leaving Baltimore and them saying Baltimore is a mess. It's not the commission. You hope your commissioner sticks it out and so to me, there's a real conflict of interest here that's not being discussed that people aren't aware of. One of many, but if they are getting money from these members as membership and paying for their program, and they're only recommending their members, I just feel like that's an obvious conflict of interest. It should be disclosed. It should be disclosed when a city takes on a contract with someone like PERF that we're going to be getting one of their people. And when Anthony Batts arrived, he talked all the PERF talk. PERF, those people, Bratton and all of his acolytes who run PERF, they run Harvard Kennedy School of Policing, and all of those appeared on all of these resumes. Harrison didn't go to Kennedy, but Batts and Fitzgerald had the same resume. And a lot of them are city hoppers. They make money. They go from one city to the other. They don't think twice about that. They don't consider that a problem, and they don't consider it a problem to recommend commissioners who do that. And so a lot of the trends in policing have come out of this. It's almost like a loose think tank of these elite police celebrities. They were responsible for zero tolerance of broken windows philosophy, and they publish. Suddenly, all of a sudden, there's articles and op-eds everywhere across the country about the new broken windows community policing model. Okay, 5 to 10 years later, cities are devastated by that model. They show up with a new model, plainclothes police heroes, action heroes. Then you have the LA Ramparts gang, and now they're and Comstat is another one of their, there's a great article in the Marshall Project about this where you could see sort of the whole history of them. And now they've really been on this sort of progressive trend of exactly the way Anthony Batts talked when he first came, transparency, accountability, use of force policies. And I guess for me, what concerns me is that I'm not seeing any focus on corruption.
And you know what? It burns me up when anybody, especially somebody like that or in higher leadership, who with this transparency, accountability. I had somebody who was running in the clerk's race about, and it's like you ask yourself, what does that mean? I mean, other than the obvious, you would think anybody in those positions are supposed to be transparent. But does that, that really doesn't take us anywhere, right? And so now we know that Fitzgerald was a hopper, right? And I think a lot of people had a problem with that he went from city to city before he landed in Texas. Doesn't seem like Harrison is that. He's been in New Orleans forever, but he is in some way connected to this PERF. The question that even Bobby Moore is asking, which would have been my next question, is what do you know the annual salary or the base salary that PERF is getting from the city for this contract?
I don't. Did you have an answer to what they got paid for this?
No, but I know it's definitely in the six figures. I've heard that it's been in the six figures.
And by the way, this isn't the extent of it. When Batts was hired and finally got his job in Baltimore, and by the way, he had to leave. He was going to these training programs to rebrand himself because he was not a reformer out west. He then hired William Bratton at around $300,000, I believe, with a contract. So it's just these circular favors. In terms of Harrison, so I'm not 100. I agree that it's in the six figures. I wish I knew the number. I don't think knowing that Harrison is a PERF pick, and PERF is the organization that the mayor said told her to pay him the world. So that's their work. And I don't think necessarily knowing that means we have another bad news commissioner on our hands, but I do feel like we should know,
And a lot of people are asking why pay him that up front if you're putting in these incentives in his contract that you get so much crime down, this percentage of crime, you get these bonuses. Well, why not give him a contract that was similar to past commissioners of 190, 200,000 and say, all right, it can increase if you come in and show and prove that you can be this commissioner that we need.
Like
not
most
just
people in
handing
our
it to them.
job.
Right.
I mean, honestly, a lot of these perks concern me because my main focus is police corruption. Police corruption. I went to the PERF website because they have all these articles, and I entered into the search bar corruption. Like, what are they saying these days? 0 articles. Like, they're not interested. They are not. And honestly, William Bratton was the guy in charge of that whole Biggie Smalls, Tupac with the Rampart scandal. Like, he tampered all that down, so no cops besides a couple got arrested. They don't care about that. They're not concerned about how police hold themselves accountable. So sorry to go back to I talk a lot, but to go back to my point, when you have all these perks about bringing crime down, now I'm concerned because we know stats can be juked. We don't know what it means for crime to go down. We know murders can get called suicides or cleared on dead bodies. That's a lot of incentive to give someone we don't know yet, and a lot of room for possible corruption, especially if he's bringing in all his own people. I just see the potential here, and I don't know the guy, and hope to God I'm not right, for like vultures taking Baltimore's money and gaining, like the problem has always been.
Absolutely. I mean, look at what was the fund that they put together after Freddie Gray? I forgot the name, but Michael Cryer was in charge of it. Millions upon millions. I think they got close to $1 billion they raised after Freddie Gray. One Baltimore
Right.
campaign.
Right.
We can never, hundreds of millions of dollars poured into there. Yeah. You cannot show me where that money went to.
Yeah.
They can't even answer for it now that it's defunct and there's no longer a One Baltimore, where that money actually wound up. There's no new buildings, brand new, nothing over West Baltimore. There's nothing honoring Freddie Gray or anything like that. And I don't know. It's still kind of very to me. But I know Jason has some information from earlier today. There was a press conference, family, introducing Police Commissioner Harrison. Who was brought in today. Again, today is his first day on the job. Tonight, there'll be one of the first of 9 community hearings that will take place across the city of Baltimore, introducing him to the citizens of the city, supposed to, I'm assuming, listen. It's a listening tour, or welcoming tour, they're calling it. He has been invited to our live stream next week. Down at Union Baptist Church, so that you do know that. So, if I was him, I would definitely make my way through there, especially with the leaders that we have that are being a part of this. But that's what we're talking about today. We want you to be a part of this conversation as well, in terms of what do you feel, not only about the salary, but about, this entire thing from PERF, and what Justine is telling you, and, the things that we've seen here in the city of Baltimore and paying these consultants. Because I know it pisses off a lot of Baltimore residents. It's like what Jason said earlier. Everything is a problem. Let's just pay an outside consultant. And it's like that's the fix. And it just, people are definitely fed up with that. Yeah, so caller on the line.
We have callers. And did you want to go ahead and play the press conference real quick?
Let's get the callers in, and then we'll do the press conference. And then
caller, you on the line?
Yes, I'm on the line. How you doing?
Hey, PFK Boom. What's going on, brother?
You already know. How you doing, bro?
All right, sir.
I had a few questions.
okay.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, we got you.
How you doing? What I'm basically trying to figure out here, or work with what we're trying to work with here. Of course, I'm the co-founder of 300 Gangsters, which is the young men and women who are what we consider the most vulnerable, which we were criminals at one time. Let's keep it real 100. I've been home 25 years. I've been here 45 years in Baltimore. I've been through about 9 million commissioners. Mm-hmm. Reason why I say this is that Baltimore is a very unique place, even down to the criminal part of it. I used to be a criminal, so if a police or a commissioner or no one in society has ever spoken with a real inmate or a convict or a prisoner, I don't pretty much know how any of the work that always be claimed that it's going to get done. Like I know a lot of commissioners say they was going to come here to do things, and as you notice, they get kicked out of here because there's no involvement with grassroots re-entry, ex-offender-led organizations, so that we don't just do like we're doing, just locking people up, and it almost looks like the bad guy versus the cop. My question is there going to be any support from, and I'm speaking probably in general, like when are we as a city going to take the initiative to maybe do community policing so we can police the police, because they cannot police themselves first? But as you know, me being, you know me, Donnie. You know me, bro. I really don't deal with police, and I think I shouldn't have to with the record they have. I have a very good record as a citizen and working in Baltimore with the streets to the seats politically. But what people have to realize, me, myself, I personally would never sit down with a police or a commissioner of Baltimore until or I probably never would, they would have to show their work or their effort to even be in my presence. Like, I'm a citizen, I have a community respect, and I wouldn't want to tarnish my respect that I got with the disrespect and the damages. I don't have a DOJ report against my unit or my people taking care of my city, but the police does. What I'm just saying here is, for movements like 300 Gangsters and many other pocket movements that's throughout Baltimore who can't deal with the police because we are in society, we are in the streets. The police has a bad image right now. What I'm trying to get people to understand, that they need to work more with community police groups who are going to be here forever. Like, we live here. You have groups that are really out here 24 hours, not just 300 Gangsters. Y'all got Safe Streets. Y'all have people that y'all need to as a community, that I think we need to put a lot of our energy, not even with mayors or politicians, even with mayors or politicians that's in the community that we know that's got to be here, that I think that we should just also, while this man is trying to do whatever he's doing, I think we all need to maybe try to either create, make a budget, go in our own pockets as a community, knock on each door maybe, for men to men, women to women who used to be in the Army, ROTC kids, and let's community our own community, because the police are only, as I hear to tell you, are here to respond to crime. They're not here to stop crime. So we really have to understand what the Fitzgerald guy is only pretty much going to be able to do is oversee. Davis wasn't there when Suter got killed. You know, so he has to oversee. We on the ground, and we know the truth. So only thing I'm really saying for this panel, or even for what we are asking for as a city, again, my city dying, if Fitzgerald does it, or if he doesn't, or he leaves, we still know we got a deeper problem that he can't solve, but us citizens can. And I just thank y'all for the opportunity. But again, I like the panel, but I just want all that's listening, that if we could just come together ourselves who live here and police our own communities, believe me, the police probably wouldn't even be needed as much as they are if we would take the initiative to know what it is to be a citizen and not just live in Baltimore City.
Absolutely. And we appreciate you calling in with that boom, with that insight, because that's
cold blood. I'm listening.
No, I don't say that's you know, we talk about this, the politics of the policing and commissioner. And again, a police commissioner is not going to change a damn thing, especially within a force. And then again, the force isn't there to be a community partner with the community. They're there to police us. All right. And so at the end of the day, until we as a community learn that and understand the fact that we shouldn't have to rely on a police force to give us a better and a safer community, when we got community leaders that can step up and do that. The question is, how many of them are going to be willing to step up and do it?
See, the thing about it is, I do understand that, and this is what the part is just as the police are afraid, as well as the church is afraid to come out now, you got even leaders like they unfortunately, like in my situation, you know me, I be really in the mud. Like I'm on Fulton and McHenry, and I'm at certain places that they really want leadership, but they don't want to come where I'm at. And I understand that. So really what it is that it's like classes that we first have to give. What is engagement? What is the education? What is the power? What are the tools that you take to a young man with a gun in his dip right now? What are the tools how you deal with an addict? If, just being a leader, and I'm a student as a leader every day. I learn something new every day. It is no, you got this in this work. I've been on the ground 25 years, and I still don't got this. Hear the world tell it. You would think that Boom know what it is. Why do Boom know how to stop a criminal? Because Boom was a criminal. Homeboy, you know you remember me from the streets, and you probably proud of me now, but nobody asked me, how did I stop being a criminal? It would be nice if you asked the criminal how to stop being a criminal.
Right, right.
But I got you, man. We all we got, we all we need. But again, this is not something that's on Fitzgerald, PFK Boom. It's not going to be a broadcast. The power of this change of this city is where anyone who has a lease and anyone that's paying rent and utilities in this city, that's where the answers to the problems of which that I see. Because that's how I changed myself, and I've seen things change in this city from people who live here. Not one doors. The way you save people is and help people is you got to love the people first. So to get into all that, and once if it's just a check, then we will forever be in the conditions that we are in now. And we're going to get into the love factor. This is about a humanitarian war that we have all throughout the United States, consent decrees and all that. So this is not like we're the only city. So Baltimoreans don't feel like we the baddest of the world. Do not believe no statistics, because what we are bad at, we also have some great things here. And leaders is what we definitely have. We don't need a lot. Right. We use 3 and make it happen. But I got y'all. We all we got. I thank y'all for this evening. And again, when.
Hey, Boom, I hope you can join us, too, on President's Day down at Union Baptist Church, man, and bring your solutions and your ideas with you.
Man, I mean, the inbox, you know what it is. The People's Headquarters, 1742 McHenry and Fulton. I'm there 7 days a week, Sunday to Sunday, to answer questions just like this, get addresses and bill. But that's where the People's Headquarters is at 1742 McHenry and Fulton. I'm there Sunday to Sunday, strictly on the ground, in the streets, so that questions can come to me as they present themselves. But I definitely need that information. Now I'll make something happen to try to get there.
I got you, Boom. All right.
Salute.
Yes, sir.
Salute. Appreciate it.
Caller, you on the DMV Daily Show.
Hello?
Hello. Is this Richard?
Hi. Hi, this is Bobby. How you doing?
Hey, Bobby. Why you and Richard sound so much alike?
Yeah, I thank you for, teaching me about PERF. I had no... it's the first time I've heard of the organization, so thanks for informing me. I guess you may have covered this, so I apologize if you did already. Does PERF have, basically, if you are a member of PERF and you're a possible candidate for one of these high-level executive law enforcement roles, obviously they get paid from the city that they're contracting with. But do the candidates themselves, do they have to give a percentage or a certain sum of money if they're hired, basically because PERF is lobbying on behalf of them, like a recruiting agency would do? And number two, since the city decided to contract with PERF for the police chief recruitment, is this something that typically the city can just do unilaterally, or if they get paid 6 digits, do they go out for bid for this, or do they sole source it? I feel like something, if you're going to use a contractor for, a contract this big and a role of this importance, you'd have to go out for bid, correct?
Well, the first question I had myself, and I was looking for a lot of examples of that. And I mean, I researched pretty closely. I don't think that they provide a percentage. I don't think they work like a staffing agency. I think it's more informal. I have seen them pretty much solely promote their own paid members and people who've attended their classes. So that's probably where they get paid for their service indirectly. Otherwise, I think it's probably a lot of relationship building, shaking hands and then wait, what was the second question again?
The second question was, I guess when
bidding.
the mayor's office comes to the decision of, using PERF for their recruiting efforts, is this something that they have to go out for bid for, given that it's a 6-digit contract? Or I guess is it treated like any other normal service where it has to go out for competitive bid? Or do they just get a privilege of being able to contract with the city without a competitive bid process?
Honestly, I should get that answered for you. I don't think there's a competitive bidding process for it. I've never seen that. We would have seen it. It would have made public news. But I am curious to know what line item it comes out of and where the authority is vested. I have been writing to some of the city council because, some of the city council members, even Brandon Scott, have been complaining that this offer is ridiculous, and the mayor has deferred to PERF and said, well, PERF said we should pay him even more. And I have asked them, can you look into the process by which she gets to pick her can there be any kind of guidelines? Because right now she has free reign. She can promise to involve the public and not involve the public. So It is a really good question where that authority comes from in terms of, honestly, there's been a lot of consulting. They gave the Souter investigation 6 figures.
Correct. For the board.
That wasn't that wasn't a bidding process, know.
And I don't think it's necessarily in this particular case. You're not looking for a bidding process. You're just looking for the best consultation that you can get. So if PERF happens to be an expert in that field, that's who you're going to get. You know what I mean? It's just like also forming the panel to investigate Detective Souter. You're going to get the best of the best, and you're going to pay them their consulting fee that they want. You're not going to competitively bid that out.
But that would go through the Board of Estimates, though.
It would still go through the Board of Estimates, And when you have unfortunately, though, when you have a mayor that has, 2 folks that has 3 votes out of the 5, you're going to get whatever consulting firm, approved every time. That's what's kind of happened here.
I feel like with every time I see another big paycheck for consultants, and honestly, the BPD monitors fit into this too, for the consent decree, it just seems like once you dig, you see conflicts of interest all over the place. The consent decree, first of all, is representing cops back in the D.C. area. They report to Andre Davis, whose job is to protect the city. It's nuts. It's just,
And one of the conflicts Go ahead, Bobby. Sorry.
I was going to say, this may be a naive question, but I know that, from what I've been reading online and, talking with people, there has always, I would say in the past 5 years, been a call for more of a non-traditional police commissioner, whether that be someone who previously worked with law enforcement and now works with some social justice organization or works with a criminal justice advocacy organization. But I have felt the sentiment for more of a non-traditional candidate for police commissioner. And do you think the role that PERF plays obviously makes it's never going to happen, essentially, is what you're saying?
As long as the mayors decide that that they don't have the time or the capacity to do the right kind of search or invest the community in what kind of leader they might like. But you are right. I actually, the commissioner and deputies, I believe, don't have to be, they could be civilian. I was looking into this because there were some questions about whether Deputy Commissioner Bonaparte is certified because he was out of the force for a long time. In any case, in researching this, the police commissioner is not even considered a police officer according to the state. It could be a civilian. There may be some issues in terms of the federal clearance, getting security clearance, but I don't know. I think it would be great if we understand how our commissioners are getting picked using these consultants that are only looking at this certain class of police leaders. Then maybe we can create enough political will as citizens to say we don't want to do it this way anymore, and ask the next person who runs for mayor, how are you going to pick your commissioner?
And in some cases, Bobby, we talked about this before the show started, that there really seems to be a conflict because every time you look around, you see Kennedy Harvard Institute tied in, and we know that prior mayor Stephanie Rawlin Blake actually attended Kennedy Harvard. Anthony Batts attended Kennedy Harvard, and then you confirmed to me this afternoon that Fitzgerald as well as Harrison is also
not Harrison.
Well, Harrison. So
yeah.
you don't know Harrison hasn't attended.
He attended Perf. I didn't see that I don't recall that he attended Harvard.
Right.
I'm sorry.
But usually they send them to Kennedy Harvard
Yeah.
to learn criminal justice policies.
Yeah.
That they come up with this standard for operating a police department throughout the country. And that's why Dr. Batts attended this particular program to understand what the actual standard or best practices was, and he took this particular course.
And he did, and he came and he changed a lot of policies. And Davis took it even further. And actually, the policies are very long. They're very technical. They are, on paper, somewhat progressive, most of them. So now we have the consent decree at $160,000 a month, fixing our policies. And, when I went to a consent decree meeting, this is a little off topic, but on topic, I guess. I went to a consent decree meeting and I talked to Seth Rosenthal, who's the head of the monitors. And all of us in the room, we asked, what are you going to do about cover-up, the culture of cover-up, corruption? And he said that wasn't his job. It's not one of the DOJ's requirements. And he said that they would fix it by training internal affairs. But, internal affairs knows what they're supposed to do, and then they don't.
Right.
So,
and we know that internal affairs has been a broken system because you're expecting the police to police the police.
Yeah. And there are ways to address police corruption. I mean, if we all agree that police corruption is sort of the overriding issue, not even so much. Maybe there's training needs, and recruitment needs, but the policies might be okay. There are ways that agencies have fixed corruption. There have been commissions, famous ones in New York, and they don't always work forever, but they usually have short-term, benefits. You have to get rid of a lot of people, and Baltimore has absolutely no mandate, nothing in writing, no bodies that are focused on police corruption as far as I could see, and millions of dollars being spent to fix the department.
Right. You got anything else for us, Bobby?
No, this was
right.
Just thank you for coming on, and this has been really informative for me, and thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you again, Bobby. All right, so we lost Mr. Politics, but we got our legal eagle soaring in the building here, Ivan Bates. So Ivan, take us away here. And in a few seconds, when you have an opportunity, we have the press conference from the commissioner with the video that we're going to play to the community when you get a second. It's only about maybe 7 minutes long with some questions.
Why don't we go ahead and talk about that? And then after we talk about that, I actually wanted to sit and see the Gun Trace Task Force. They were down in Annapolis today, and I wanted to talk to you about that if you got a couple minutes.
Sure.
So why don't we finish and watch this press conference?
All right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, let me say thank you for having the confidence in me and then selecting me to lead the men and women of the Baltimore Police Department. It's an honor. It's a privilege. I've enjoyed a 28-year career in law enforcement, and now this is the evolution of my career, the next chapter in my professional and my personal life. And so my wife and I are eternally grateful for this opportunity to join your team and to lead the men and women of the Baltimore Police Department. And we have settled in, and my wife and I are now residents of Baltimore. We completed our move just last week, and I am excited and eager to get to work. I want to thank our council president and vice president, members of our city council for being here with me today, and the members of your cabinet, Mayor, for all the support that you've given me and to bring me here and now to get me started. I want to thank every member of this team for being here, all of their support. I want to thank the men and women of the Baltimore Police Department for the work that they're doing. I am eager and looking forward to working with you, working for you, advocating for you to get you all of the resources you need to be successful so that the Baltimore Police Department can be one of the great police departments in American policing. And to the residents of Baltimore, I'm eager to get to know you, to hear from you, to speak with you, to work with you, and engage with you, to make sure that we can build relationships that were never built, improve on good relationships, and certainly repair bad relationships, because it will always be about relationships. And it is the one way that together we will make Baltimore a great police department, make Baltimore a great city. And so I am eager to hear from you tonight through the next couple of weeks at the community meetings, to hear from you, your questions, your concerns, answer your questions. It's very important to me. We've done this before, and I'm excited. I heard the mayor call it a challenge. I see it as an opportunity. It's an opportunity for the city of Baltimore, for the police department, and for me professionally, and I can't thank you enough for giving me this opportunity. I want to say publicly thank you to Commissioner Tuggle, who's been holding this down, and to the residents of Baltimore. Commissioner Tuggle and I have been speaking every single night since the mayor offered me this position and I accepted. He has been bringing me up to speed, educating me and briefing me on every single thing that happens in the Baltimore Police Department, every decision he has made, and the reasons why and the rationale why he made those decisions. And so thank you so much for all of your support. I appreciate it, and the residents of Baltimore are better because of it. Once again, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of the City Council. Thank you, residents of Baltimore.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll take a few questions.
Mr. Harrison, what's your first task as you begin in this role as the acting commissioner?
Well, there are two things. First of all, I want to hear from the citizens, the residents of Baltimore. Certainly take their questions, hear their concerns. I want to meet with and hear from the police officers and rank and file of the Baltimore Police Department and hear their concerns. Of course, I'm the #1 advocate for the members of the department to make sure we get the resources and tools we need that I know this team here will give us so that we can be successful. But it's going to be important for me to make both organizational and personnel assessments to see what we need and to see who we need, and to build the appropriate team so that we can be successful. But the most important thing is hearing from the residents, hearing from the rank and file within the police department.
What do you anticipate your first choice that you have to make?
I'm sorry?
What do you anticipate being the first choice or decision that you have to make?
Well, I think the information that will be provided to me through these listening sessions and answering the citizens and residents' questions, meeting with the members of the department, and learning about the nuances of the day-to-day operations will form those decisions. Right now, it's important for me to understand, like I said, what we have, what we need, and who we need to be able to arrive at what will be the first decision. The first decision is to learn and to learn the things that I don't know.
So you have experience with consent decree in New Orleans. How long did it take for you to see some real change in that department because of the implementation of the consent decree? And do you have a real sense of what the federal government wants of this police department and how you can achieve it?
Great question. I became the chief of New Orleans in year 2 of that consent decree, and following my predecessor who had the first year, it does take a long time because it is about building a machine, and the machine can't run until you first build it. And so while it looks like things are sometimes moving slow or not moving at all, they're actually moving because it's being built. It took about 5 years for us to be at what we would call substantial compliance in most areas, and then this year, if you look at New Orleans, they're in substantial compliance in most of it, and probably will be at the exit this year, which is record time for a consent decree that large. I suspect that it will be similar here in Baltimore. Several of the members of the consent decree monitoring team here are on the New Orleans consent decree monitoring team, so I'm familiar with quite a few members of that team, and I've already met with the judge in my first week here.
Mr. Harrison, how do you plan to measure
Okay.
success?
That gives us an opportunity to talk a little bit, I guess, about the consent decree. We've seen the commissioner designated Harrison. He, I guess, is going to go talk to people, learn what, as he says, learn some of the things he doesn't know. But one of the things that's important with this consent decree, we have, I guess, what is without a doubt one of the cancers within the department that they still are dealing with, the Gun Trace Task Force.
Yeah.
And my understanding today, the Gun Trace Task Force, there was another hearing down there in Annapolis in which members from the state's attorney's office were there, and they talked. Did you get a chance to look at any of that or follow any of it?
Yeah, I followed it. I might be a little behind on this committee. I have a question. I don't know if you can answer it. Are they, is it a committee designed to hold hearings, or are they conducting a rigorous investigation behind the scenes?
Well, I think they're more or less having hearings, getting the information. I believe if they probably have information behind the scenes, they're probably getting it.
Yeah.
But I don't really know, or I haven't heard of any subpoenas being issued and looking at it. It's interesting today. The state's attorney's office was there, and what I didn't hear from them was sorry.
Right.
And that's the part that blows me away. You allowed the Gun Trace Task Force to terrorize the citizens, and you couldn't say the word sorry. And, I mean, what were some of your takes?
It was interesting to follow it in real time because it kind of brought me back to the Freddie Gray trials, in where it's sort of like, wait, you're saying this and now you're saying that? This is very confusing. I mean, do you know what I mean?
Oh, the same exact
same
two
people. Yeah.
And Janice Bledsoe and Michael Schatzow.
Yeah.
And
I know Schatzow sort of said, well, on the matter of having a do not call list, which is where you learn bad information about a police officer, he really seemed to talk way out of one side of the mouth and then the other. I'm seeing the tweets, and at first he says, well, none of us could have possibly thought that police officers would do these horrible things, which is ludicrous because we've had articles now in the last year that everybody knew.
Yeah.
And then he sort of pivots and says, well, we had a system in place where we would tell them not to move forward with it. And of course, all the blame shifting back to the Baltimore Police Department, it just felt very classic.
Well, notice the Baltimore Police Department and the judges. It's the judges. I see now they're saying, oh, the judges are stopping us from erasing the convictions. No, they're not. The same way that you file these writ of error and coram nobis on your own is the same way that you could do it again in reference to these individuals.
Can you explain that a little more?
So basically, the state's attorney's office decided that with this new weed marijuana policy, that they would file what's called a writ of error and coram nobis. And it's a legal document to vacate a conviction where you're trying to say, in the interest of justice. That's pretty much what it says. That there's something wrong that happened. There was newly discovered evidence, something that should show that this person shouldn't have this conviction. So for the state's attorney's office now to blame the judges is crazy, because the state's attorney's office in these marijuana cases, simple possession, they filed a writ of error and coram nobis that said, hey, on behalf of the state's attorney and on behalf, it was the state versus the state for writ of error and coram nobis that says we need to erase these convictions. But why won't they do that for the Gun Trace Task Force victims, where you could do it for the marijuana possession victims? That tells me they really don't want to, because if you really wanted to, you would just go ahead and do it.
Some of it have to do with the fact that you're dealing with possible violent criminals as opposed to just marijuana possessions.
Well, I think what it has.
You know what I mean? Because some of them.
No, I agree, but most of these were arrested or gun arrest, and whether or not you view them as violent or don't view them as violent, they were corrupted by corrupt officers. Right. So technically, they shouldn't have been had the conviction in the first place. So in the interest of justice, you can't necessarily look at the crime. You have to first make sure the person's constitutional rights were protected. And, people always ask me all the time, how can you be a defense attorney? How can you be a defense attorney? Well, I mean, my first thing, I don't ask them what they did. I just sit down and look and read to see, hey, were their constitutional rights violated or protected? Once I get past that, then I look at to see really what happened. What did you do? And things like that from a defense attorney point of view. And so my way of looking at the writ of error and coram nobis, if you do it for the marijuana possession cases, why couldn't you do it for these Gun Trace Task Force cases? But yet you want to blame the judges. Don't blame the judges, just get it done.
Yeah, I was really surprised by that, because I saw on Facebook somebody sent me this where Jan Bledsoe entered a conversation saying that somebody said, why are you going to be overturning GTTF soon? And she said, well, you let me know if you have a GTTF case and I'll look into it. It was sort of like, don't you know all the GTTF cases?
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like, we talk a lot about oversight with the Baltimore Police Department and independent outside people, and we don't really talk about that with the state's attorney's office. But, there's relationships and conflicts of interest there too with police officers. And, I just feel like maybe we should be talking about that also, because they have their they have a lot of authority over the future of GTTF victims, and they might not always have like total independence. I'm not sure. I'm just saying maybe it should be examined.
Well, I think that's a great idea. You know, it's going to be interesting to see how the police department with Commissioner Designate Harrison works in reference to the state's attorney's office. One of the things that was real big this weekend, the marijuana smoking zone, where I guess they had advertised that they were going to have a smoking zone to smoke the marijuana, and the police were standing there. And it's interesting because, you know, what I took from the press conference that we just heard, Commissioner Designate has been talking to Interim Commissioner Tuggle. And I'm pretty sure Commissioner Tuggle said the things that after consulting and talking to Commissioner Designate Harrison.
You mean about marijuana, his
about
statement?
Marijuana, his statement, different things that are going on in the department. I mean, look, if you're a police officer and you're the incoming commissioner, are you going to be able to sit down and say, okay, well, we're not going to prosecute marijuana cases? Are you going to lose your rank and file officers who are like, okay, well, what are we going to do? You know, in terms of, i.e., marijuana, smell of marijuana is one of the tools that they use to search a vehicle, to search a car, probable cause. So, I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see how all of that kind of shakes out. But you know, when you look at the Gun Trace Task Force, that was one of the things that they would use. I smelled marijuana, so I searched the car, so I had him step out. Boom, you know. I mean, how do you deal with that? You know, from the state's attorney's point of view, from the police department's point of view, from the public citizen's point of view.
Well, I mean, what you're saying really speaks to the oddness again of her statement. You know, I'm a prohibitionist. I think these things should be legal personally, but the timing was really odd. We have a commissioner starting in weeks.
Yeah.
Like, it just seemed, at the time I was thinking it had something, honestly, I don't know, this could be left field, but I was thinking, you know, Kamala Harris was in the news getting a lot of attention as a progressive prosecutor. So it was kind of reflected, and she got her, you know, Mosby got a New York Times article. So,
but today she said she actually smoked marijuana and inhaled. So
she did. I
saw an article.
Who?
Kamala Harris. Yeah, she actually said in college she smoked marijuana and inhaled.
Oh, at Howard.
Yeah.
You know, I went to Howard, so you know I ain't got nothing but love for that shit. You know, that's you know, look, I understand. I just think right now the whole city's in a state of confusion.
Yeah.
And, you know, the whole city to me just seems to be looking for true leadership. And, you know, I was glad to see at the press conference, Commissioner Designate Harrison seemed to have said the things they need to say, seemed to be very humble, sitting there talking, thanking people. And the word that I kept hearing from him over and over again was he looks forward to talking to the residents.
I think what I got from him was probably the right, I mean, I have no idea, time will tell, but the right disposition.
Yeah.
Whereas I think that's been missing for a long time. You know, Davis was also one to say, I'm talking to the residents. He's in that HBO film talking to the residents, but it never really came off as that authentic. Mm-hmm. You could always sort of see him hurrying them along to whoever he was talking to the conclusion he needed to hear for his own, you know, media campaign.
Isn't it the standard lingo, though? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't want to say, I'm not going to speak to the citizens. I mean, you know, you get shot down, you know.
But we've had a lot of arrogance. I mean, it was something that people felt from D'Souza, too. It was sort of instinctive. People are seeing these leaders show up where the arrogance is sort of overwhelming. And I do think, at least on that, he struck the right tone, you know.
Let me ask you, if you had to speak to, say, a member of the city council, based on your research and analysis and breakdown in terms of how everything came together for the contract, what's the question you would want them to ask Commissioner Designate Harrison?
I mean, for me, this is my special interest, but how do you plan to address, I've been talking about it, corruption and the culture of cover-up. How do you plan to create a culture of accountability over a culture of cover-up? I don't really see how anything's going to change without that. All the policies and trainings in the world, if they have each other's back, you've seen it more than me. I've seen it a fair share.
The thin blue line.
They go into overdrive. I've seen, you know, I won't speak for every case, but the handful that I've looked at, which are prominent, sincere evidence manipulation, mishandling, like you know, how about you? What would your question be?
Wow. I would want to know, for him to actually tell us what success is for him at 2 years, at 4 years, and at the end of his contract.
Right.
Point out, show us the measurables that you view as successful, because then we have something that we can really judge him by.
That's good.
Because for us, it's success meaning, oh, it's 250 murders, it's 190 murders. For him, or success, you know, look, we have the culture of crime, the culture of corruption, you know, X number of convictions from different units, departments. How is he going to define success?
It might be qualitative. It might be morale.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's, you know, a sincere issue.
Maybe, you know, we'll have 1,000. Right, yeah, he may say we'll have 1,000 more officers now. You know, it's interesting because I was reading an article they were talking about in 2015. They were talking about how they needed to get rid of some of the officers that were there because they had too many. Now, in 2019, they're like, man, we could just find some officers. Yeah. You know, it's very interesting. It just seems to me that after 2015, everything changed in our city. Yeah. And we could all look back and say, okay, we can recognize and see, okay, it was a Freddie Gray. But it wasn't just Freddie Gray. I think you have a whole new birth of a number of activists who've come out. A number of people have found their voice. I think that helped tremendously. I think you have more disenfranchised people now than ever before in Baltimore City. We always had a lot, but now it just seems to be so many more that were right on the cusp, and now, you know, and they've, you know, finding their voice. But I also think society in so many ways has changed. You know, with the election of Donald Trump, it's almost as if some members of society, mean and angry toward your fellow neighbor, has just been accepted. And I think, you know, how is Police Commissioner designate Harrison going to be able to deal with these things? And, you know, one of the things that's interesting, when you go down to New Orleans, some of the same issues that they faced, we face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think for me, some of the questions that I would have for him is, well, one is how does he plan to retain and hold officers? Because we know that there's more officers leaving than there is actually officers coming in from the academy. So how does he plan on strengthening his police department so that folks don't want to leave and go elsewhere? I know that when Bill Feld was running things, that he really kind of upset the ranks when he took away, like, for instance, tuition reimbursement. And that was one of the perks that the officers truly appreciated. And I think when Dr. Batts came in, he reinstated the tuition reimbursement back as a tool to try to retain and hold officers. So I'd like to see what his suggestions and plans would be to hold on to officers. And then the other question would be is a two-part question. How does he feel about micro-policing and even the utilization of auxiliary policing, where the community is engaged and involved in policing their own community, and are able to, you know, work on micro-policing type of tactics before the police have to get involved in certain major crime, you know, issues within the community. So allowing the community to help police itself and resolve some of the issues. And even in some cases, I've heard one person from the community talk about like a community court or like a community type of commission that would deal with and address certain minor issues, not the heavy drugs, and that would allow them to be able to handle the drugs and things like that. But some of the things like, for instance, loitering around the businesses, allow them to be able to handle that. And in some cases, to have the citizens to be able to come together and in some cases ostracize folks out of the community. So they know if little Pookie has been in the community and continues to loiter and he won't move on, then they would actually sign an agreement to have Pookie basically restricted from coming into the community. If he does, then of course he would get locked up because he's a known drug dealer, or he's known, you know, for hanging out, you know, at the corner store and dealing drugs or smoking weed all day, you know. So, but I'd like to see how he would feel about micro policing and auxiliary policing, and allow some of the communities to have a little say and a little power in policing their own communities. So that's my take on it.
Okay.
Maybe another question might be how he feels about the Civilian Review Board and if he's willing to just politically get behind it. I mean, right now, that board has never had a moment. You know, it's really never did. It sort of did for 1 second. It reviewed Keith Davis's case.
Yeah.
And then it was, Andre Davis is strangling it out of existence. At the last GTTF commission meeting, one of the so there's something called the COTB. Are you familiar? Right. It's a consent decree community board. As far as I could tell, it's staffed with the mayor's political friends largely.
Right.
But one of the
what's his name? Ray, Catalina Bird.
Catalina's on it,
right?
yeah.
And what's the other? The gentleman she was dating, Ray. Oh goodness, I forget his name.
But one of the members of the
It'll come
board
to me.
spoke to the GTTF panel and said we should get rid of the Civilian Review Board. It has never done anything in decades. It hasn't really existed in decades, you know? And so I would be curious to know if this is the kind of police leader who welcomes civilian review.
Yeah. Also kind of curious, and I know I'll put him on the spot, is
Ray Kelly. That's
Ray
it.
Kelly.
Yeah.
His views
Ray Kelly
of the
runs it now.
LEOBR.
Okay.
You know.
Of LIBOR.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so that would be interesting. I mean, you have to look at it from to me, the commissioner's point of view, designate's point of view. He's danged if he does, he's danged if he doesn't. If you support LEOBR, your rank and file officers, for the most part, they like it, they want it, it protects them.
Correct.
If he shows he's against it, then his rank and file officers may sit down and feel like, you know what, you're against us. It's interesting, the dynamic between being a senior officer and being rank and file officers, the ones who are really in the trenches.
Yeah.
And, he has to do something to gain the trust, the love, and, respect of the officers. And it'll be very interesting because his whole career has been in one police force.
Correct.
So he's now moving to another jurisdiction. I'm sure he'll be able to bring, I know in the contract he's allowed to have 8 people, I think, on the senior staff.
Right.
Interesting.
And, at least 8 that he chooses.
Correct.
So, it'd be interesting to see how many people he brings up from New Orleans.
That's one of my biggest fears with this new commissioner is when Dr. Batts came in, we had a huge hiatus of senior leadership. There was just leadership that had been there 20 plus years that decided they weren't going to go with the changes that Batts was looking at putting in. And in some cases, they felt that they were looked over by some of the folks that he brought in. Like he brought in one of his friends from California to be like, I think his direct assistant or direct aide.
Rodriguez.
Deputy,
Right.
Oh, I can tell you about Rodriguez.
Right. And as soon as that happened,
Tell me later.
There was like
a
huge hiatus of senior leadership that decided, you know what, I ain't gonna deal with this anymore. I'm out of here. And I just hope that this doesn't, this happen. I hope that he supports the little bit of senior leadership that we have left and encourage them to make sure that they are a part of the department and a part of the changes that he wants to implement, and not discourage them and make them feel that, I can't do this anymore. I'm out. So, and again, that's what happened during Batts. It was a huge hiatus of senior leadership when Batts came in. So, your senior leadership is definitely needed within the department.
There's a lot of problems in that senior leadership, though. I mean, one thing I tend to hear from rank and file or former officers is that pretty much with 3 exceptions, the command structure needs.
Well, that's what I was talking about. That's what I was talking
Right.
about. Most of the upper command rolled out when Batts came in, and again, a lot of it, from what I talked to some of the commanding officers that were in the process of leaving out, was that they felt that they were undermined, that they'd been around, they knew what needed to be changed, and they were waiting for a police commissioner that would work with them directly to help implement a lot of these changes. But just some of the changes that, Batts was trying to implement, they didn't feel that it was going to work with this particular department.
And some of those were Bratton's recommendations from that $300,000 contract, or roughly $300,000. Very radical. I mean, Batts changed the entire department. If you go, if you look
he
back,
even went to the 10-hour policing, which they were originally doing the 8 hours, and then he came in and changed it to the 10-hour policing, and then didn't have enough officers to really implement the 10-hour shifts.
Caused so many of the issues financially in terms of the overtime.
Yeah, and actually, I wonder with crime too, because a lot of times we point to this moment where, oh, he told cops to stand down, and so they've stood down for the last 4 years and will never get back up. And I don't know if that's really believable, but the fact that he took officers away from their beats or their posts maybe had a big effect.
So I have this argument all the time with folks is I don't know if it was so much that they took a knee or because of Batts and because of what he said, or did they take a knee because they just didn't agree with the policies that were going on? Almost like because they are unionized and they are represented by the FOP, it was almost like the whole organization said, well, we're not going to do this anymore.
So yeah,
almost like a protest or a demonstration or
I feel like the best answer I got to that, because I was really curious about that when we were working on the podcast. The best answer I got to it, and from a source that I just never has led me wrong, was that people just didn't know what to do. They didn't have good leadership. They didn't feel like they could turn this way or that way and do the right thing. And they were being told to change how they were policing, and so they didn't know where to go. I don't know that that's 100% right. I just felt like that was a believable answer as opposed to an organized protest or following orders, just feeling like... And you saw that play out in the riots. I mean, just a mess, So, I don't know. It's funny, one of the things with the commissioner we have to think about is kind of like with a president. There is some amount of figurehead, they make speeches and press conferences and they talk and they have meetings. So one thing is just what kind of a leader is this person? What kind of a speaker?
Right.
Because I feel like that could go a long way. Right. It just feels like every time somebody gives a press conference in Baltimore, everyone is furious. And wouldn't it be so nice if people weren't so mad,
Well, that was one of the things of bringing Dr. Batts in, was that he was supposed to be this charismatic figure, very well spoken. Remember, like everybody kept saying he was handsome. But you know what I mean? Like,
I think he thought he was.
Right. You know what I mean? Like, that's the take I was getting for the community. I didn't say he was handsome.
What plays in California may not necessarily be connected and play the same in Baltimore.
Right.
I mean,
well spoken.
I think being a police commissioner in a major city, especially like Baltimore, that's got to be a very hard job. But you also have to remember he's dealing with a culture of officers that he didn't, when you look at Commissioner Batts, he didn't know them like that. So he brought in someone who was his right hand, and Deputy Rodriguez didn't play. He did what he did.
Right.
And
we gotta have a show just for that one day, because you gotta tell us. I know you know some dirt. You laughing over there. I know you know.
I'm
some
not gonna
stuff.
say I know any dirt. I've had a number of dealings with Deputy Commissioner Rodriguez.
Right.
And I also think when you get into the command staff, it's hard because sometimes they don't know. They know how to be what they believe is a leader, but to be a leader of men and women at that level is a lot harder. Right. And I think
and especially with a different culture.
Yeah, the different culture.
Right.
But like Justine said, with the officers didn't know what to do, and so because they didn't know what to do, they didn't know where to turn. And when they're angry, they're frustrated, and they look around. Every time they look around, they feel they're being attacked. Right. That they did this in Minneapolis, but this isn't me in Baltimore.
Right.
And so I think eventually you just have the confusion all the way around, and then you have people losing hope and losing faith in the department. And that's why I think one of the reasons we've lost so many officers, because I think a number of them have lost hope and faith and just said, you know what, I'm just going to get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know I spoke to a female officer. She wanted to be nothing more than a police officer, went to college, was there 6, 7, 8 years. And then she was like, people just didn't understand who she was, and she left.
Yeah.
I hear that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they waited it out. The last conversation I had was a former patrol lieutenant, a black woman. She got harassed by those GTTF guys. She said things got better for her when she stopped trying to do a good job. Whenever she really put herself out there to do something good, it's like, that's really sad.
I hear that a lot. And then we even had a conversation last week, and I told you that I actually had a guy that when he first came out into the beat, you learn all this stuff, constitutional policing, the academy is totally retrained, and matter of fact, your first few days when you start in the academy, they say, you're not going to do this. You're not going to do that. This is not 21 Jump Street. This is not a police show. This is not a crime fighting show. This is how you're going to police. But as soon as he got out with his training supervisor, it was like everything you learned at the academy, throw it away, son, if you want to survive, and listen to me and follow what I do and learn what I do. Like, and learned a whole different culture of policing that was contradictory to what he had learned inside the academy. So it was like, you know, it was like a culture shock to him because he was thinking he was going to come out here and do the right thing based on his training, based on the ethics that had been provided to him. But then when he got out here, it was survival of the fittest, you know, and you better follow rank, son, if you don't want to get hurt out here in these streets, you know, you better follow suit, you know, and you don't tell, you know, you don't, that was actually another thing he had said too, was that you never tell on your other officer. You know what I mean? Like that was the rule of the land, you know? So, but you know, it's just sad because there's some officers, and even we have, I've stated this plenty of times, we have family members that are Baltimore City police officers. And a lot of times they operate their shift as, I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to do as far as my job is concerned. And I'm not going to try to, you know, be the hero or be the whistleblower or be the one that tells, unfortunately. And it's unfortunate, but, you know, they want to be safe out there, you know. And I've even heard of stories of officers saying that, you know, if you buck the line or buck the system, you might be that one that runs into that building on your own with no backup or with nobody watching your back in the process, you know.
Well, you know, I think it's got to be a difficult job. Yeah. I think, you know, it's moved on to many ways. Sometimes they feel it's a thankless job. So you could be an officer that's doing a good job, part of your community, involved, people love you, you're volunteering, you're making good arrests, the whole nine. And then you have an officer who may not even be part of your force that does something stupid. Now all of a sudden you're getting the hatred from them,
right?
From the average citizen. Yeah. So it's almost a thankless job in a lot of ways.
Like the officer that had the issue in the community with the guy. Remember they had to fight over there off of Monument Street. Remember he was fighting him. They had been engaging with each other for weeks with the community, I understood. You know, and the guy had got sick and tired of this one officer that they knew. They had a relationship, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I know other officers seen that conflict, you know, relationship that was going on, you know, and somebody should have stepped in somewhere to say, hey, look, man, you know, you really shouldn't treat the guy like this. You know, I know he may be a drug dealer. We may know him and he's a familiar, but we really shouldn't treat him in that aspect. Like, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I think it's thankless, just my opinion. I mean, it's kind of rhetoric, you know, that cops, a lot of times they spread the sort of poor me message to this really high extreme, and it's not even in the top 10 most dangerous professions. And that doesn't mean it's not dangerous, but it's much more dangerous to be like a garbage man for real. So I don't know. Sometimes I think that gets a little overplayed. It's certainly probably annoying to have the community against you. I don't know. Mostly they struggle with their own department in Baltimore, it seems to me. That's usually what I hear. Sometimes they get like annoyed, but at the same time, sometimes you'll also hear that they understand why the community is pissed off. And
oh yeah,
and then when you get the ones that try to do the right thing, you get a rap put on your car.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's hard because if you want to do the right thing, it doesn't line up with the perception of what's right of other officers, then you'll be ostracized.
Yeah.
And so who you turn into to have your back and keep you safe. And I mean, it's you know.
And when you take the job, you're expecting not necessarily to be a hero, but policing and, you know, being out there in the streets is kind of looked at as being heroic, as having valor, as having candor, as, you know, having some sort of respect or a level of respect. And unfortunately, when you go into the department and you see things are kind of ran the other way, you know, you kind of lose that passion that you had for the job. And again, that's what I see with a lot of folks that I know as police officers and family members. You know, they love the job, they love the duty, but they came in not understanding that this was the dynamics, and they had a different take or a different outlook as to what policing was. You know, and they were coming in to be a heroic, you know, type of person, or a person to serve with valor and candor, especially some folks that come out of military, you know, because they go into military with that attitude that you serve with dignity, you serve with respect.
Yeah, you know, they're usually, I've talked to a few of those that are like Inferno Awakening, and they have nothing good to say about the department compared to the military.
Yeah.
I had this weird thought. I'm just going to, do you guys watch Friday Night Lights? Did you watch that show?
The football show?
Yeah. Do you remember the last episode? I was thinking about Harrison this way. I don't know. It's just off in left field. But you know how in the last episode he's been in Texas forever. He's been a coach in this one town, and then he goes to Philadelphia. And I was thinking about that, and the thing he says is like, well, it's going to be a long, road.
Yeah.
And I just kind of had this image of Harrison that way, where this is like his Friday Night Lights.
That's in some ways you can think of that. I think when you look at Baltimore, I think it's a little bit bigger in terms of people than New Orleans. But you're right, the southern town where he spent his whole life and then moves up
to the northeast, and it's like a different vibe.
Did you catch in the press conference one of the words he has said? I forget, but you can hear that New Orleans accent in his voice. I forget what the word was, but it was like really distinctive. You could hear that New Orleans little bayou, little slang in there. I thought that was kind of
well. Here's hoping he's a nice guy.
Here's hoping him to have success, because his success means the city's successful.
Yeah.
So, well, look, it has been a really, really great show. Justine, thank you so much for coming. You were a guest before. You're going to be a guest hopefully many more moons.
Nah, this is it.
We're waiting for you to come and do your podcast.
All done.
We're waiting for you to come do your own podcast here.
Wrapping it up.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we're not going to be, this won't be the last we'll be hearing of you. So they can follow you on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
Jewstein3000, and my website is the Suitor Files, where I've been writing about all these issues.
Wow. Well, thank you so much.
And before we go, I just wanted to put out there about the town hall that we're having on President's Day. So, family, we hope that you can come out and join us for our very special town hall, live stream town hall, where we talk about public safety policies in Baltimore City. And this is not a bitch match. We're not looking for people coming out bitching and moaning and groaning about what the police are doing and what the mayor is not doing and what's not happening in your community. We want solutions. We want folks to come out, especially folks like Brother Boom, come out with your solutions and allow us to be able to really talk about those solutions and see if we could be able to put something together to be able to present to the mayor and the new commissioner and hopefully be able to get our city in a better track. Get it going in a better track. So we hope that you could join us. That is going to be at I apologize, I'm trying to pull the information up here. I know it's going to be at Union Baptist Church from is it 7? Is it time from 7?
Here, no. It is at Union Baptist Church, and that is at 1219 Druid Hill Avenue, and it'll be from 5 to 8 p.m.
5 to 8.
This Monday, February 18th, at 1219 Druid Hill Avenue. Panelists will include Tara Hoffman, Sergeant Clyde Boatwright, and Zeke Cohen from the City Council.
And we're hoping to try to confirm.
York, and other hosts of the DMV Daily Show.
And we're trying to confirm now, hopefully the mayor can join us as well and bring the new acting commissioner so that we could be able to present some of these ideas to him and have an opportunity to engage him in a community setting. Also, if you can't make it out to the event, don't worry. Just go to dmvdaily.news or join us on our Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube feed. We will be broadcasting it live, and we will be taking questions and or comments or your suggestions on any of those social media sites during the broadcast and presenting them to the panel. So there's different ways that you can actually join us, family.
Yep.
So
with that, we just want to say thank you, everybody. It's raining, sleet, cold. Please be safe. God bless, and free Keith Davis.